Hey guys, it's Daniel back here, or DK Daniels to most. You'll probably know me as. I'm gonna read Chasing Christmas again today. I have quite a few days to go, and I'm kind of a bit tired already, but not so much as reading the book. Just it's been a long day. But yeah. So if you don't know who I am, I'm DK Daniels. I'm an LGBTQI or GLTP, whatever you want to call it, author who writes primarily YA fiction. And I'm on a journey reading Chasing Christmas, which is one of my Christmas, probably my only Christmas novel um, at the moment. So, yeah, what's coming up basically is that I'm going to be reading the fourth chapter, sorry, the third chapter officially in the book. And yeah, so the recap. In the previous chapter, now we were introduced to Noah Finch, which is the main protagonist of the story, and we learn that Noah has been dreading his family coming to see him for Christmas, and uh, sorry. Yeah, so he was dreading his family coming to meet him for Christmas because he likes his own personal space. And sorry, um, but yeah, he's coming to meet his family. And I'll start that again. So, Noah Finch is officially a bit disgusted, not so much disgusted that his family is turning up, and he wants just more so to have his own personal space and whatnot. And it's just looking like it's not going to be that way for the whole Christmas season. And of course, Elijah Abernathy, his biggest crush, ends up getting dropped off in his house due to an accident. And it's kind of an enlightened period for young Noah, even though he's kind of like, oh wow, my crush is like in the same house as me, and that's kind of the way it goes. Um, Sorry, I got distracted at the start. I was trying to post in the chat log a small synopsis of what happened in the last chapter, but I only noticed now that there's a maximum character count of 200, so it's I can't do that. Um, Ask away. So if you have any questions, ask away. But basically, in the last chapter, Elijah turns up and we get to see the love interest before going forward. Now we're going to meet some of the family, Aunt Annie and Uncle Andy, and the job lot of Lucas, Benjamin, and Adam. And of course, the grandma. They're a bit of a wacky family, so it's it's always comical when you have family gatherings, um, who all kind of embody each other in a sense, and that's what I was aiming to go for. I'm not going to ramble on too long, but I'll probably make a quick start of the day because I don't have a lot to say other than these two guys is called Hamish and Enos now, I think. So we officially have names for these two fellas in the background. I'm not too sure if you can see the other guy. Me and my boyfriend bought them on Monday, and now they are officially mascots and they have names. And yeah, so I'll just give it another minute and then I'll officially start. If you didn't know or you're not aware, I'm giving away 2 or 3 copies of my book here, Chasing Christmas, signed versions of it, and all you have to do is be on my mailing list, yada yada. I won't keep repeating it, but yeah, that's all you have to do, and you'd be picked from a random lottery. Um, so I want to say thanks to all the folks who are still continually coming back. You spread the word. If it's something you'd like to do, it would help me a lot, to have more new folks who might know, um, that you might know, who'd be interested in LGBTQ content. Yeah, so I'll uh, I'll make a speedy start, and if you have Eggsy, I think Enos. Okay, was it typo? Okay, so Eggsy. So what's it? Hamus and Eggsy. Okay, we'll call him Eggsy then. um, okay, so the guy with the trapper hat here, him there, we'll call him Eggsy. Okay, so righty, we'll start and we'll see how it goes. So, bounding down the stairs with Elijah holding my hand, actually holding his hand, I led him down the L in the stairs and came down into the foyer. Okay. Down into the foyer. Okay. Where was it? Okay, to the foyer. The fresh air from the outside world was present, and Mom was standing at the door as everyone came flooding in with hands full of colourful and enthusiastic gift wrapped presents. Everyone is smiling. There's this new happiness that is present, and I can't quite explain it. It's like a proudness, but it's not proudness at all. Not dragging, but guiding Elijah behind me, the two of us approached my family, who was still coming in through the door. If anybody thought, where are this mass of people coming from, they'd probably think there was a line outside the door, though simply they just took forever to get from the doorstep into the hall. Uncle Andy stood boasting by Mom. The energy radiating from him is so immense that it feels like he has had a nuclear meltdown, and the elements are now open in the air to affect the happiness of everyone in the foyer. Vaguely, over his voice, I could make out one of the two twins, who is equally making as much noise as their father. "What time did you get on the road?" Mom asked, in reference to Uncle Andy's previous statement about the traffic. "We left around 1 a.m. last night," Uncle Andy blurted out over the kids, as I pushed myself into the circle. Uncle Andy turned momentarily away from me and missed his chance to see me. "My family is here. This is like so cool." "Is that right, sweetie?" Andy called out at the door. I couldn't exactly see who he was talking to, but he was talking to someone outside. Peering over and through the bodies, I could see my Aunt Annie out at the car bringing some stuff in with her light jackets and other essentials for the kids. Glancing through the family, I came to notice that Lucas was not among them. I found myself becoming a little agitated, looking for him among people, though I felt content to be still holding Elijah's hand. "How's it going, kiddo?" Uncle Andy jollily cut in, ruining the moment and distracted me in mid-thought. Like a deer caught in headlights, I listed upwards to his face. Andy stood smiling back at me, as I presumably beamed back at him. His face had changed a little. The presence of stubble was shocking, even more noticeable than last year, and his black hair had begun to fade, with streaks of grey. Uncle Andy has always been a large, huggable family member, and in doing so, I let go of Elijah and held both of my arms out for a hug. He didn't waste any time in returning the mutual feeling, and he bent his knees ever so slightly so he could lean down to return the hug. Turning around to Elijah, he stood bashfully and waited for me to introduce him. He honestly looked cute. To be honest, he just seemed overly shy, which I never came to notice before. Reaching out for him to come closer, I glanced up at Andy and he said, "This is my friend Elijah." And with that, Elijah held out his hand for a handshake. Elijah became very formal and well mannered. It was almost as if he was attending an interview or something, and he needed to present the best side of himself. Though, knowing Uncle Andy, he would never accept such a ludicrous and ridiculous act from a family friend, and especially on Christmas. Uncle would say that giving someone a handshake on Christmas Eve is like an insult. He once told me it's the equivalent to giving someone a kick in the balls or a punch to the throat. Giving Elijah a deadpan expression, and then a goofy one, Elijah smiled at my uncle as if it were for effect. Uncle Andy just leaned and drew Elijah into a bear hug, and the cutie just froze up and didn't know how to react. He looked embarrassed, even turning red, I must say. He helplessly let my uncle hug him, and then they broke the hug. "Happy holidays, mate," Uncle murmured before turning back to his wife, who had finally gotten through the door and was smothering my mother with hugs and kisses. Elijah's parents stood in the background quietly and observed the family gathering about in front of their eyes. "Maybe they do feel out of place," I acknowledged. Elijah said nothing as he reassembled himself and grinned bashfully and looked down at the floor in embarrassment. The twins knocked me off balance, and both of them wrapped their small bodies around my equally scrawny frame. "Watch it, guys," I said in protest, though the both of them gave no attention. The both of them latched onto me and held onto me for a couple of seconds before letting go and turning to my mom to hang out with. Still, though, there was no Lucas. Did he just decide not to come this year? I thought. Leaving Elijah's side, I pushed through the crowd of newly arrived and stopped shy of the door and peered out into our yard. Though there was no sign of my cousin, I felt a little saddened that he didn't come along. The entire driveway was covered in snow, with an exception to the entrance and the small curvature leading from the path to our door. Other than that, the street was pretty much deserted. "Noah, get on over here, big guy," a Harty's woman voice sang from behind. Turning to my aunt, I braced a smile, even though I was a little disappointed. The moment I spun around, she pinched my cheeks, which I hate, and started to toyfully pull at my cheeks, to wag my head from side to side like a little child. "Ain't you turning into a little heartthrob?" Aunt Annie said, leaning forward to kiss my cheeks sloppily, first left, then right. Then the show of affection turned into some sort of game. She let go of my cheeks and cupped my chin and began kissing all around my face to aggravate me. First, she kissed my cheeks again, then my forehead, and then she tried to get in at my neck, which I then tensed up and folded up the ledge between the neck and shoulders. Finally, she got the memo after a minute of teasing and eventually stopped. "Where's Lucas?" I asked genuinely. Noticing Elijah in the background, I felt a little bad for abandoning him, but a lot of people need hugs and attention at the moment, so I can't exactly be at his side. But for one thing, he has started talking to my uncle, which is okay, I guess. Though I wonder what Uncle Andy is babbling on about. He'll melt anyone's head if you had to sit beside him for an evening. "He's asleep, honey, in the car," she said. Flipping my head back out to the car, I glanced out to the vehicle, trying to make out a figure of someone in the car, but the blackness of the interior and the overexposed white snow offered very little assistance to the human eyes. "Can I wake him up?" I suggested, turning to my aunt faintly before looking at the car again. She lifted her arm and checked her watch. "Yeah, he's been sleeping long enough. Go for it," she said. With a ruffle of my hair, I motioned for Elijah to follow along. Stepping over the doorframe, I hopped down each of the single stone steps leading up to our front door and out into the thick, powdery snow. Trekking towards the car, I could hear Elijah faintly trailing behind me because of the particular crunch that is accompanied by each step when you press down hard enough to make the snow crackle. Eventually, I stepped off onto the freshly shoveled driveway and approached the driver's side of the car. Squatting down, a sudden devious idea popped up. He's always scaring the crap out of me, so the way I figured it, what harm is it to wake him up in the middle of a pleasant nap abruptly? "What's up?" Elijah asked. "I'm going to scare my cousin awake," I said. After I said that, Elijah's facial expression turned from a sullen look about it to an amused manner. Since his arrival this morning, his face has only changed to a graceful smile once or twice, and that is about it. Not that he really meant it or anything. Everyone is just trying to be helpful, and he's just trying to be grateful. But something resonated with his impression this time. It's almost as if he was intrigued by the idea, and the funny thing is, he is still bemused by the scheme. Elijah hasn't gone back to a sulk or a saddened frown just yet, and that's great. Let's hope this persists like this throughout the day. Let's hope this persists like this throughout the entire day, because Elijah shouldn't be sad, especially him. In all of the years I have come to know him, he has never been one to cry or frown. Elijah is always the one showing off how perfect his teeth are with a white toothed flash and dimple of his cheeks. Though something struck a chord this morning when I saw him all sad and stuff. Even though we're both from two different social groups in school, this is actually cool to have him about. It's almost impossible to imagine this happening. How would I break the news to people at school? They would think I'm making it all up. Just wait and see when I go back after the holidays. Jack will believe me, surely. He's my best friend, so he has to. Come to think of it, Jack, I wonder how he's getting on with this morning. I hope the Christmas holidays are going well for him and he got a present for that stupid wannabe as much as I hate her. I don't hate her enough not to be able to get a present from Jack. Jack said he was going to get a new controller for my PS4, which is what I wanted. He's not going to waste money on something useless. Instead, Jack got me something I really needed and want. And that means that I don't have to make one person sit out when we're playing a four-player game. That is cruel, so at least now I can play couch co-op with four people on the one TV. Let's just hope he stayed true to his promise, otherwise I'll be really down. What's the plan? Elijah asked with a smirk. God, that smirk was totally hot, and he showed his teeth. I can feel his hot breath escaping from his mouth and planting itself on my cold cheeks. It, it's only come to my attention at this very moment that the both of us are not wearing any jackets. Rebel much, I thought. Snapping out of my daydream, I mischievously said, You go around the other side of the car and knock on the window. Okay, Elijah whispered and crept to the side. Keep your head down and wait for my signal, I urgently mutter, latching onto his wrist. Elijah fixed his eyes to where my hand rested on his arm. He gave a faint grin and slithered around the front bumper as I went crouched down and waited for him to get into position. Crawling along as quietly as I could, as to make as little noise as possible, I trudged each leg awkwardly in front of the other. I could see bright creme glow of sorry. I could see the bright creme glow of my skin reflecting in the glassy red of the car's paint job, with the vast plains of white surrounding me. Stopping at the back passenger door, I pushed down on my knees and floated to the window. Grinning in at Lucas, he lay resting, sleeping against the window on my side. His brown hair looked a lot darker than the blonde hair I had always known, and his face appeared to be amassed with an adoration of 100 new freckles. He looked peaceful, but not for much longer. Peeping through to the other side of the black interior, Elijah hoisted himself to meet me at the opposite window. He also gave a grin of mischief for what was about to come. Lifting my right hand up to my head height and in view of the window, I imitated while mounting knock. In doing so, Elijah pulled his hand up from his side, raised it to the window, and gave the glass two firm knocks, and I jutted back down as fast as I could move. Glimpsing upwards while compressed to the body of the car, I tried to writhe around a little to see if Lucas woke up at all. I always hated this part of the game, but I think it was also the fun part of pranking someone. It's the adrenaline rush that is associated with messing with someone which causes the giddiness. Yes, of course, there is the risk of getting caught, and all the fun ends the minute you are seen. And Lucas is usually one to catch on quick, though he didn't seem to be moving. My first thought is that he's still asleep. Nervously, I shift upwards again, daring to be exposed. Just as I get to the top, Elijah takes his place in the other window. Looking at Lucas, I hop about in the crouched position, trying to get a better look at his face. He doesn't seem to be awake, and with that, I gave Elijah a nod to do it again, and in doing so, Elijah dropped out of sight and thumped the window pane twice. I hunkered down not a millisecond later, and just as I got to my compressed position, I was quite sure I saw Lucas shifting in his seat away from the windowsill. Cautiously glancing back up at the window, the crown of Lucas's head had moved from leaning on the car door. Stirring up one last time, I braced myself as I struck to the side of the car and peered over the windowsill. Lucas had inched across the seat and was looking out the window on the other side. He must not see Elijah, so I decided to proceed with my palm. Crouching down, I knocked once more against the clear glass and waited for a moment, hoping that he would come to my side of the car with curiosity. Deciding that time was opportune, I heaved up and bellowed a mighty roar against the window, and Lucas let out a muffled, girlish shriek from inside the confined vehicle. Lucas scampered backward, flopping over in the seat, and slid off into the footwell, linking the gap between the front seats and the back. I felt the compression of my jaws pushing upwards as a smile broke out, which followed with a hearty chuckle. Lucas sat up from the floor and hauled himself back up into the center of the back seat. He glanced around at Elijah, who was equally smiling about our accomplishment. A little dumbfounded, Lucas swiveled his head back to me and then behind to Elijah, trying to make out what was going on. Then a smile bestowed his soft pink lips, and that was all the questioning and answering answered. Lucas scooched his ass towards the door, reaching down for the lever. He popped the door open without pushing it into me. "Move, fish face," he lambasted, before teasingly edging the door harshly against the top of my legs. "Ah, that hurt," I protested, and he fully opened the door as I stood back. Sliding out of the back seat, Lucas plopped his feet down on the sludgy snow accumulated on the concrete. "Okay, fish face, you got me, truce?" he asked, holding out his hand to shake on an agreement. This has been something to me, and Lucas has always managed to go about. We always, somehow or another, found new ways to scare each other. Last year, it ended with Lucas jumping out of the shower stall in the main bathroom on me. I didn't really think much of it. I thought the both of us had actually called it quits for the day, though he didn't seem to be all pent up. Lucas always finds a way to get back at you. But anyway, I had gone in to use the bathroom, and while I was in the bathroom, Lucas stood silently in the frosted shower stall and waited for me to finish up and wash my hands. Just before I got to the door, he flung open the shower door and it hit the wall, causing the pane of glass to shatter. The result gave him an unforgettable look of contempt and worry. I've never seen him look so worried as he did then. Though I think Lucas secretly thought he was going to get into a lot of trouble for making an honest mistake. Surprisingly, Mom didn't really seem to care. She was glad that Lucas and I were okay. I think, given that it was Christmas, she was lenient. After that day, his behavior changed for the rest of the Christmas vacation, and he became a little quieter than usual. He wasn't as rambunctious, if that's the word to use. Lucas became a little more cautious to his surroundings, and he stopped plaguing me. To be honest, I wonder what this year will be like, given the fact that I just scared the living daylights out of him. I can only imagine Lucas having a mucky diaper embedded in his pants. The thought made me snigger, and I think Lucas might have taken it as a sign of competition, because he raised his eyebrows and formed a quizzical expression. Truce, I said, and held out my arm for a hug. In doing so, Lucas latched his arms under mine and dragged me into a hug. It's good to see you too, Lucas added. Gently, he released me from the hug and smiled. Yeah, it's great to see you too, I beamed. So, do you want to come in, or are you gonna sleep out in the driveway tonight? I asked. No, I'm coming. It was just a long drive. My iPad died like halfway through Pennsylvania. Lucas scoffed. Must have been a long drive, I added teasingly. Yeah, you've no idea what it's like sitting next to those two. Lucas turned, pointing towards the door where the family still chattered and congregated in the hallway with the front door wide open. It's what I'd imagine being tortured in an interrogation room would be like, Lucas chided and nudged my arm to add effect. Breaking into a soft smile, I glanced down at the ground and backed up. Lucas looked a little more mature this year. He didn't seem all that different, but he appeared more mature, Even though Lucas had been driven for the past 12 hours or so, when Uncle and Aunt could have flown from New York to Chicago, but they didn't. He seemed fresh, as if he had just had a shower and cuddled up on the sofa to binge watch all of Stranger Things or Riverdale. Lucas' clothing looked to be a little creased, but that is expected considering he has been sitting for forever. Maybe they pulled over at some point in the journey to let the kids go to the bathroom and stretch their legs, but he seemed genuinely alert. Wearing grey diesel jogger pants, and a green khaki hoodie with a white t-shirt underneath, Lucas's appearance hadn't changed a bit. Yes, his presence did look smarter, but he still had the same freckles splashed around his face, with an abundance of them across the bridge of his nose. His blue luminescent eyes appear extra bright in his small oval head. It's like when you take a picture of yourself and your iris illuminates from the harsh flash from the camera that just fired. His eyes, almost a ghost, sorry, his almost ghostly blue eyes against the stark white surrounding contrast, and his pale creamy skin adorned with brownish freckles, made his eyes stand out a whole lot more. Elijah made his way over to us and stopped a couple of feet away, unsure if he should proceed or wait for me to introduce him. Glancing over at him, I smiled and then waved him over. Hey, Elijah chimed nervously. He inched his way into the circle and rubbed his hand together. Hey, Lucas offered with hesitation. Were you knocking on the other window? Lucas asked. Yeah, Elijah breathed heartily. Lucas broke a smile and said, That was cool, followed with a yawn. An awkward silence formed for a moment, and Elijah gripped the sides of his arms just above or directly on his biceps. While Lucas kicked his feet at the concrete, and every so often he would nudge a piece of fresh sludge of snow with the tip of his shoe, somehow I find myself coming to the conclusion that the clumps of snow on the ground were like a mountain, and he was a mighty god erasing the world below him. I can't explain it, but it seems like a relevant thought for the moment, so let's just go with it, Noah. Boys, a woman's voice called from the door, and everyone, including me, looked over toward the door. All Lucas had to do was tilt his head to the right, though Elijah had to turn partially and rubberneck leftward. Looking over at the doorstep, Aunt Annie came mousing down the driveway towards us, talking, actually more like shouting over to us from the far side of the car. If this was a good representation of not using our inside voices, then this was it. Though it was not malevolent, it was cheerful and energetic in nature, and something about it made me tingle inside. It made me appreciate that the family were here and things were finally going to kick off, and the holidays will be totally awesome. I take back whatever I said last night about my cousins and aunt and uncle sleeping on the landing area outside my bedroom door. Somehow, I felt like this Christmas was going to be the best one yet. I can't explain why yet, but maybe as time goes on, I'll know more. Lads, can you help me with the bags? Aunt Annie ordered, more so than asking. Annie glided around the body of the car to the trunk of the car and opened the hatch. The hydraulic sound of the pressure system attached to the access of the trunk made an all familiar sound as it tracked upwards with Aunt Annie's hand on the door to stop it from springing up too fast. Flooding around to the back of the car, the three of us crowded around by Annie, and I felt Elijah brush up against me, and something about it excited me. It wasn't on purpose. Well, I don't think it was, to say the least, but the contact was like electricity coursing through my body, and it gave static to my fingers and made my toes wriggle with anticipation against the claustrophobic material of my shoes. You are new, Annie blurted out, motioning her head towards Elijah. Yeah, I guess I am, Elijah responded awkwardly. You'd usually see Jack here, so I guess she had mistaken him for Jack for a moment. It wasn't uncommon for him to be here today, or sometimes he would pop over on Christmas Day for 30 minutes or so and give me my present. Also, that also might still be an effect because he hasn't given me my present yet, and I haven't given him his either. I know what he has gotten me because Jack told me. However, I need to go over to his house to get the controller. Maybe he forgot about my present, but I didn't forget about him. I mentioned it to him, and he just simply said, cool. But he never discussed giving the present to me, which is something he would say like yesterday. Just like always, Jack would have told me that I have a present for you and that I've been meaning to give it to you, except I just hadn't had the chance, and my school bag is always full. Maybe I'll pop over to him this evening or maybe tomorrow, which reminds me I have to reply to his text. Bashfully grinning to my aunt, I splutter out, yeah, this is Elijah. He's a friend from school, I lied. And he's staying with us for the holidays. Well, his family is. Well, in this case, I'm Annie, she said, sweetly. Then my aunt pointed directly at me. This absent-minded creature here forgets to fill me in on all the important things, she teased. Blushing, I looked at the back of Lucas's head, who, in return, swiveled around to me and smirked. What are you smiling at? Annie asked Lucas a moment later. Nothing, Lucas responded defensively, glancing back to his mother. I don't see what's so funny. You're just as bad, she cracked. Feeling my chest rumble, I began to chuckle. Oh, you got owned, I teased, and Elijah sniggered at our inside mockery match. My aunt turned to the trunk of her car and said, all right, guys, you can help me take the luggage from the side of the car and into the house. The rest is the presents, she announced. Can I have mine now? Lucas chanced. Not a hope in hell, she teased, with a smile before reaching into the burrow and wiggling free a suitcase from deep inside. Lucas pushed himself closer to his mom and helped hold some of the presents that were sitting on top of the case from sliding onto the ground. With my aunt pulling the bag out of the trunk, Elijah stepped in and held the parcel shelf up, and out came the case. Annie held the suitcase out for a volunteer, and neither of the other boys would take it from her, so I decided to get it. Gripping onto the handle on the side, my aunt let it go, and the weight of the case quickly took over whatever muscle I do have, and the case plummeted toward the ground. Forcing myself to keep it hoisted off the snow and dirt, I gritted my teeth together and breathed out the excess amount of weight in my hands. Put it down, you muppet, before you give yourself a hernia, Aunt Annie chided, easing the wheels of the case to the ground. I set it down and felt the immense relief of the heavy load subside. My aunt reached into the trunk and pulled out a couple of bags with clothes in them and handed them to Elijah. Right, you two, Aunt Annie said, pointing at Lucas and me. Lift that up to Thomas's room, she said. Bending down, I took the bottom and he took the top, and the both of us hoisted the suitcase up off the pavement and started aimlessly walking toward the front door. I absolutely hate walking backward. It's like it makes it so much harder for me to understand or get my bearings because I can't see what is behind. So when we got to the divergent path in the path, so when we got to the divergent in the path, I switched positions with Lucas and both of us pushed up the steps and into the house. Between the both of us, we tried to match the weight of the suitcase, distributing it equally so that the other person wasn't getting an inconsiderate amount of weight. And yes, I will say that bloody thing weighs like a ton. Elijah just trailed behind us slowly, following us for guidance to Thomas's room. The hall, at this point, had cleared out, and I could hear everyone in the kitchen, and a moment later, the front door was slammed shut as my aunt came in with us. You're doing fine, boys. Put your backs into it, she offered as she passed by us and into the kitchen. The cheek, I thought. She goes off to leave us to do this. What sort of slavery is this? No, I now know why I love the holidays. This is the part of the holidays I despise and both love. Coming toward the stairs, Lucas stopped for a moment, resting the case on his knee and straightening his grip. With a grunt, he lifted his half of the suitcase, and the two of us started up the stairs. Oh, I forgot to introduce Elijah to you, Lucas, I said. I agree it's not the most suitable of times, but sure, look, I might as well finish through on the interaction at this point. Lucas, meet Elijah. Elijah, meet Lucas, I earnestly said. Turning at the L point in the staircase, scuffing the side of the railings, it caused some of the leaves from the garland to fall off onto the top of the suitcase. Pleased to meet you, Lucas grunted as he braced himself for the final climb. Likewise, Elijah murmured, followed by the ruffle of a plastic bag or something from behind me. Busting open the door and mutually racing across the room with our grips barely non-existent on the case anymore, plopping it down on the bed, the slats on the bed slacked from the bag's harsh pounds down on top of it, and we smiled once the deed was done. Lucas bent over and rested his palms on his knees and drew in a deep breath. Oh, air. That was really heavy. Lucas laughed and then gasped for more air. A second later, Elijah set a duffel bag down on the bedside with a plastic bag atop of it and smiled at us. We both must look like weaklings to him. It's funny how something so simple can be so hard. Standing up and tapping my stomach with the back of his hand. Well, you're filling out, Lucas broke in. To my much embarrassment, I brushed his hand away and offered an equal amount of welcoming. By the looks of it, you've filled out enough. You could lose some of that blubber, I wittily retorted. Lucas reached out and gave me a playful nudge, which caused me to stumble back a little. Lucas turned to Elijah and offered his hand out. Proper this time. I'm Lucas, he said. Elijah let forth a grin and took his hand in his, and the both of them gave each other a firm handshake. To see that happening makes me almost jealous, but not like majorly. It's good to see them getting along, I guess. I do feel like Elijah is just following us around, unsure about what to do because he feels out of place. Offering some sort of penance, I decided to clue him in on what exactly was happening. Elijah, every year my family comes from New York and they spend time here for Christmas. I guess you guys will be staying in my room, so my room is as good as yours, I guess, I said. Is your room still a pigsty? Lucas cut in. You'd know. Last year, you stank the fuck out of my room with those chemical farts, I joked. Hey, whoever smelt it has got to deal with it, period. Lucas deadpanned all of a sudden. The seriousness of his face suggested that Lucas wasn't joking around about what he was saying. He is 100% serious about his condition. Whatever he ate, cheese, his farts would be sorry, okay. Whenever he ate cheese, his farts would be something rank. Though unfortunately, I am not sure if Lucas does it to annoy me or because cheese is the tastiest creation since ice cream. Oh, and pizzas. You can't forget about pizzas. Still, Lucas's fart smelt like something crawled up his ass and died there when he let out when he let one rip. And it was not pleasant for someone who has to sit or sleep behind him for the entire Christmas season. Though to be honest, I always pretended that the smell was a lot worse than it actually was when I was young. Sure, they were smelly, but there was just some unknown spoken fact that it is fun to state the obvious and say that his stink is truly the vilest of all. And somehow he would take the comfort in being able to produce such a fine specimen to change the density of the air. After lights out, I treasure so many nights he would fart in bed, and the two of us would progress into a state of tittering. The both of us found it virtually hysterical that he would never stop giggling after he did it. So much so that it amounted to one of the rents having to check in on us and tell us that sleep was needed for Santa to arrive. That we'd have to sleep, otherwise, Santa won't come to leave the presents. Yeah, sure, they were just nervous about us getting up to go wandering when they had the Christmas presents spread out all over the living room downstairs. I secretly think that's every parent's worst nightmare, having their child walk in on them while they are playing Santa with a nice bottle of wine by a lit fire. Though I can't imagine a thing is worse than that. Actually, imagine my parents doing a romp together. That has enough horrible thoughts to it that it's made me shiver. Not that the two of us are older, there is a chance we can help out our folks while the twins are asleep, except that would presumably make matters awkward since they'll be wrapping our presents and that I can leave with. I'll just rip the wrapping paper back off the gifts I previously covered and pretend to be amazed. Well, not all of us will be able to see the offerings. Lucas's mom covers all her gifts before she arrives. They hide the handouts in the trunk quite discreetly so that the twins have never noticed them, or if they do, they are merely told not to go near the trunk of the car. Now, to me, being a little kid, that would sound a little suspicious. If mom told me not to go, I'd probably go there. She is apparently hiding something and she doesn't want me to see what she is trying to protect. Thinking about what to do for the day, I remember Jack saying he was thinking of going to the mall to get his wannabe girlfriend a present. Actually, he is. He said to himself, I can't really debate with him who he should or so not date, but if he were the other way, I'd happily date him when I come out of the closet, of course. And Annie last year somewhat hinted to me, and she might know my sexuality as the two of us sat alone on the couch in the living room while everyone was preparing for the Christmas dinner. She said something of the sorts, do you ever notice how gay guys dress so well? She said, to which I said, I guess so. They do wear some nice things. And I think she countered my response and threw me in at the deep end. Well, they don't spend all that time in the closet doing nothing, she jokingly teased to inject humor in the conversation. To be honest, I guess I did get a little too quiet for my liking, though quietness can be taken as a sign of listening or attention at least. Apparently, not talking means you're paying close attention to that person who is speaking, right? Maybe so. But I guess it's not the subtlest of ways staying out of a conversation and admitting to your aunt that you're the gayest of gayest can be. I don't think I'm girly. Well, I hope not. But that was last year. And this year, It's 2017, so let's make it about 2017. Okay, Noah, stop contemplating how your little secret could potentially destroy Christmas, and I need to try and keep a handle on my urges to just reach out and kiss Elijah. That would be a massive mistake on my part. Thinking about what I could do with the lads, I tried to think of a couple of group orientated things to do. We could play some PlayStation for a while, and then maybe later meet up with Jack to go to the mall. That sounds decent, right? It is, after all, Christmas, so most places will be opened to like 7 o'clock if we're lucky. So, yeah, that's what we'll do. We can play some PlayStation for a little while, then maybe grab a lunch and head out. Okay, I'll just take a second there. My my throat feels like a desert. And my eyes are a bit tired today. That I'm seeing words double. I spent the entire day editing. Well, not editing. I was doing my last final proofread of How I Live Now, and I pretty much did the entire book with all little corrections. So my eyes is a bit strained from just reading. But yeah. So where am I? Okay. So how? Yes, that's a bit thing. And Annie giving orders. Yeah, and Annie giving orders. I guess that's kind of a bit like me, I suppose. I'd be like, yeah, you can do that, and I'll just sit here and relax. Although my cousin, she's a lot like that as well, and I think I kind of reinvented that kind of sassy bossiness kind of character as well, with what's it, Lila, I think it was, in A Case of Jitters. You know what I mean? Where she's always chancing things, you know what I mean? Where she's trying to get the boys to carry her bag, you know, when they're going hiking, and then she's just like, oh well, it was worth a try. But yeah, um, does anybody have any questions? I'm not too sure whether I should start another chapter because I'm seeing double on some things. Um, but you know, I don't want to get off just too early. You know, what I mean, I'll probably stay on for a little bit longer if you'll have me. Um, so yeah, drop something in the comments there if you want me to answer anything. Um, but looking back now, I really will say now I will definitely go back and fix up this. I can see a lot of places where I can improve Chasing Christmas, but it's still a very special story to me. I haven't read it in so long. Like, this is the first time I've read it in like 3, 4 years now since I released it, and it's kind of a new book to me already while I'm reading through it. And it's like, oh, I wrote that, and it's like that's quite a long time ago. And you're kind of like, yeah, it's actually not a bad book. It just could do with a bit of cleaning up. Um, but yeah, Um, so, a second, let me tinky. Um, uh, okay, maybe. Okay. Yeah. Um. So yeah. I think I'll call that with the chapter count probably today. Um. I know it's probably going to be a short video, but I'm absolutely knackered. The good news is though that uh I'll get How I Live Now out and done, and I'll be able to move on to my other projects. Um, just out of curiosity, what's my most beloved book that you would like to see that isn't released already? Released that you're looking forward to? Um, I don't know. To me, I'm always just, you know, in my heart, I want to get back to, even if we tried. And I've said numerous times to folks that I will get back to it, and I will. I've said to my boyfriend numerous times that I'm going to get back to it, and he's even mentioned quite a few times, even with me poking and prodding, I feel like there's more story that needs to be told, and I feel like it's gotten a lot more complicated, and I need to have like three POVs and stuff like that. And he said, "No, you're making it too complicated." And yeah, it's just like maybe that's one of the reasons why I stopped it, is because I was getting too complicated with it. But I'll keep it simple when I actually finally release it. I think the idea was that I didn't want to write 3 or 4 books. Um, I mean, of a story that could be kind of compacted down to one book potentially. Um, Even if we tried. um, but yeah, um, when I was writing, even if we tried, actually though, Sam's character, he was very inspired by Griffin Gluck. Um, the personality of Griffin Gluck. I really liked the personality, and a kind of a bit of a hint of me in a sense of character as well. I think it's the only story where I've actually used myself as a bit of a reference for the character. And the first time I came across Alexander Stewart, which is a singer over on YouTube, he in 2017 he sang 21 Pilots song. I think it was for the Suicide Squad. I think it was what's it? No, not Chasing Pavements. Um, I can't remember the name of the song, but he was covering that song, and I was like, he's what I imagine an Austin would look like, and he kind of was a bit of a stand-in for that character. And eventually, then he started releasing a lot of old songs, like the Elvis's songs, like "Can't Help Falling in Love with You," like renditions of them, and I was like, this kid is really trying to break my heart, and this is the perfect Austin. And yeah, he just thinks so. If you've never actually heard of him, you should definitely check it out. I think he's actually collaborated with that guy Hugo Schneider or whatever it is that does a lot of covers on YouTube of songs with the Sam Tusi, I think his name is. Or but yeah, um and that's what inspired those characters. But yeah, just looking back on some of the references there, like I'm talking about in 2017, and I'm talking about Riverdale, and 13 Reasons Why and stuff like that. It's more like 55 Reasons Why now, but yeah, Sam was a bit wacky. Although Lucas is in Chasing Christmas is hilarious. Yeah, I do like Lucas now from Chasing Christmas. I don't know. I don't think anybody really inspired him. I just kind of made him up on the fly. I knew I wanted to have one that was like kind of a bit of a smart Alec, and he'd be mouthy and he'd say stuff that he didn't mean, and the first sign of trouble he'd pretending to be like that he's brave and stuff like that, and then the first sign of trouble he's the first one running. And I just thought that was amusing. But yeah, um what else was I going to say now? But yeah, it's just funny. Sorry, just 1 second. Okay. But yeah, a lot of scenes from Even If We Tried, though. That was pretty much my very first book to write now on the likes of Nifty and whatnot, and there I can see a lot of rookie mistakes. I can see a lot of rookie mistakes that was made in the book, and when I get back around to it, I'd love to fix it up. And yeah, Ethan, the inspiration for Austin was a young upcoming singer called Alexander Stewart. You could check him out on YouTube. He had songs. He was covering a song by 21 Pilots for the Suicide Squad. That was the first time I saw him, and he's the one who um, inspired that character. But then, of course, I built upon it. It wasn't solely him, but that's what I imagined he looked kind of like, with the long hair and stuff. And then, yeah, a couple of years later, then I suppose the nearest next nearest person that would be like that is what's that kid's name? Montana Jordan kind of vibe. I think it's Montana Jordan from Young Sheldon. I guess two of them kind of look a tiny bit, you know what I mean, the same. Um, but yeah, in the next chapter now here I just looked forward. The boys are playing a co-op game, which co-op is dead. Sadly, I used to have so many memories of playing co-op when I was a kid with my friends, and one of the things I remember fondly was from Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. They used to have the co-op thing with the fixed camera angle. You'd go into like the house with the little red, two little red uh, multiplayers. I don't know what it was called, but you'd go in and you'd able to pick your character and you'd run around and you couldn't go like within a couple of feet of each other. And so many memories of just that. And sadly, not multiplayer. Multiplayer is great. It's taken up, but it's certainly I don't think it's the same as couch co-op because I definitely have a lot of those fond memories. But yeah, in chapter 4 here now going in, I mentioned a game called 7 Days to Die, and that's quite an old game. But um, yeah, I just remember that, and that made it in. It must have been a game I was playing at the time. But yeah. Anyway, I'm probably boring yous half to death. You know, you probably don't want to listen to me ramble on about games and movies and whatnot. You probably have other stuff to do. Um, but you know, I love talking about films and games and stuff. I have added the Kingsman to my watch list for the folks who were mentioning it yesterday. I'll get to it eventually. Eventually. Um, but yeah, you can pretty much ask me, you know what I mean, any questions whenever I'm live. I'm thinking of maybe doing this a little bit um, after Christmas, maybe on occasion. I might do a couple of other books. If anybody's interested in me doing the likes of You and I or something like that, you can let me know. You and I is now I think 2 or 3 years, 2 years old. Um, uh, to be honest, I never pictured myself writing a sequel to it, but I guess we'll just have to see how it goes. A lot of people want a sequel to it, but yeah, I guess we'll just have to see how that goes. Um, if you have never read it, you can probably find a copy of it somewhere. It's probably up on one of the websites I've been on, or you could probably find it on Amazon or Google Play. But yeah, that was the first story that I had an actual genuine disability to an actual to a character that I've written in one of my stories. And a lot of people have mentioned that Isaac in particular, he talks quite he's like using posh and flowery words and stuff like that. And I always figured that his vocabulary is kind of extended upon his Asperger's syndrome. So, you know, it kind of made a bit sense. And I always assumed that Max's vocabulary was kind of a bit dumbed down for the sake of that. Um, but anyway, um, I know I'm probably going to cut this short, and you'd probably want me to read another chapter, but I need my beauty sleep. Um, I'll probably be heading off the bed in a few minutes, actually, after I set up the post for tomorrow. If you are still enjoying it, just let me know. I don't know whether this is any fun for you guys, but I'm enjoying reading the story for you. But yeah, anyway, I'll probably call it an evening now, so I'll say my goodbyes. And thanks to everyone for tuning in again. It means a lot to me, and yeah, I definitely am going to rest up for tomorrow. It means a lot to me, and remember to do tune in tomorrow. if you're enjoying it, it means a lot to me. And of course, I've seen Ethan in a few. I think Ethan has been here from the start. So thanks, Ethan, for showing up so far. Um, it's great to see you. So yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna go and try to take care of myself and get some much needed rest because I'm going to need it. I have a busy Christmas season coming up, and then shortly after the New Year, I'm going to have a few books coming out, which I can't wait to share with you all. Um, but yeah, anyway, so I'll leave you and love you, and I hope to see you all tomorrow. So bye, and I hope you have a nice evening or day wherever you are in the world. Bye bye.